Hello everyone, my name is Renee and I would like to welcome you all to the FreshBooks Reports webinar. FreshBooks originally started out as an invoicing solution first, and over time we have included more approachable accounting features. The reports we are looking at today are single entry reports, which follow a more simplified style of accounting. These 4 reports are included in all of our pricing plans. For this webinar, we will be covering the following: the profit and loss, all of your sales and expenses, the sales tax summary, all taxes paid and payable, the invoice details, a summary of all invoices issued, which includes details of taxes applied, and finally, the expenses report, all expenses incurred, which also includes details of taxes applied. The purpose of this webinar is to learn which reports are helpful for tax time, to learn about the functionalities of each report, and to learn about the limitations of each report. Please keep in mind that if you need accounting advice, please seek an accountant or local tax specialist. You can invite your accountant to join your team for free in our top 2-tier pricing plans. Simply go to your dashboard. At the top right, you have the option to invite, and then you just scroll down to the accountant for free. You want to put in the accountant name, and then you're going to put in their email. And then you're able to send them an invite to get started as your accountant. Once you click on continue, you can see the message that they receive. You can also change the subject line if you need to, and then you send the invitation. You can also invite them from the My Team section. So let's have a look at what that invitation looks like. Once your accountant receives the invite, this is basically what the email looks like. It's give them a little message as well as a link to get started as the accountant. Once they click on that, they'll be able to get started with their email and a password, which gives them the accountant access. If you have questions about how to use FreshBooks or any of our features, you can reach out to our award-winning support team at 1-866-303-6061 or email us at support@freshbooks.com. From within your account, you can also go to the settings gear at the top left, go to Need Help, and it gives you our help center for our FAQs. You can send us an email or give us a call as well from here with a helpful support key when you call in so we can help you a bit faster. Now here is Sam to walk us through the reports.
Thanks, Renee, and thank you for joining us today. Let's dive in. Once you've logged into your FreshBooks account, head over to the blue toolbar on the left and click into the section called Reports. You'll notice at the very top of the reports page, we have a favorite reports section. We've starred the 4 reports that we will be looking at today. You can add your favorite reports by clicking on the star icon in the top right corner of each report. Even though all the reports are great, you can only favorite 5. Let's take a look at our first report, the profit and loss. Before we look at our first report, the profit and loss, we would like to point out that at the top of every report screen, you'll see the same features. Beside the report name is a filter icon, which allows you to set filters for your report. To the right, we have a More Actions button, which allows you to export to Excel or print the report. And then the green Send button will allow you to email this report directly from this screen. You can edit the subject line and add a personal message to the email. This functionality exists for all reports, and it will be found in the top section of the report that you are in. Let's check out the filters for the profit and loss report. The default date range for the profit and loss report is for this year. You can select the drop-down and change the report to filter by this month, this year, last year, this quarter, last quarter, or a custom date range. If your fiscal year does not follow the calendar year, you can select the custom option to enter it here. We will filter our report by last year because we are looking to report on 2019 income and expenses. Our next filtering option allows us to specify how we report on income. There are 2 options, either billed, accrual-based accounting, or collected, cash-based accounting. Accrual-based accounting means that we recognize income when it is earned, on the date that we issue an invoice, even if that invoice will not be paid right away. Collected or cash-based accounting means that we only recognize income when the cash is in our hands. Until that invoice is paid, we do not recognize it as income. It is important that you run all of your reports with the same filter. So if you run a profit and loss on a billed accrual basis, you should run your other reports on a billed accrual basis. In this case, we will report our income on the billed accrual basis. When viewing this report, we can choose to group by month or by quarter. If you group the report by month, you can click on the Enlarge button in the top right corner to expand your screen and see all 12 months. We will filter our report by quarter. Lastly, you'll notice we have the option to report based on currency. In this case, we have two currencies, Canadian dollar and US dollar. If you collect income in more than one currency, you will have to run a report on each individual currency. Once you've selected your filters, click the green Apply button to run your report. The profit and loss shows us two types of accounts, income accounts and expense accounts. All of your invoice income will be included in the sales figures. If you use other income in FreshBooks, those entries will also be included in your sales on the profit and loss. Other income can be found in the blue toolbar under the Invoices section. Let's head there now. Once you get to the blue toolbar, click on the Invoices section. From there, you'll see the drop-down option, Retainers and Other Income. Let's click into Other Income. When you arrive in the Other Income section, click on the green New Income entry. Other income is a feature that was designed to record non-invoice income, such as in-person sales or online sales. You can enter all of your other income entries from this screen. Back to our profit and loss. Below the sales line, you'll notice cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold is the direct cost related to producing a good or service. In FreshBooks, when you rebill a client for an expense, it will automatically become marked as cost of goods sold. Let's take a look at this. Head over to the Expenses section in the blue toolbar on the left side of your screen. Select the expense that you would like to rebill to your client. Click into that expense and select the Edit button in the top right corner. The expense settings will appear on the right of your expense. Notice that Mark as Billable and Cost of Goods Sold are set to No. If you choose to mark as an expense as billable, you'll be prompted to choose a client to assign it to. You'll have the option of including a receipt image on the invoice and adding a markup to the expense. Click Done to save these settings. Notice now that Cost of Goods Sold is set to Yes. You can change this and unmark this expense as Cost of Goods Sold. You can also choose to always mark this expense as Cost of Goods Sold. Back in our profit and loss report, all cost of goods sold will appear under the sales line of this report. Cost of goods sold is deducted from sales, resulting in our gross profit. Below sales, cost of goods sold, and gross profit is a list of our business expenses organized by category and subcategory. Main categories are the expenses you see here with the little icons. The subcategories are in gray text and are organized within the main category. Your total expenses will appear at the bottom of this report. Total expenses are subtracted from the gross profit to give us our net profit for the year. We've covered what is included on the profit and loss, so let's talk about what isn't included here. If you have invoices that are still in a draft state, those will not appear in the sales section on the profit and loss until the invoices are emailed to your customer or marked as sent. If you are running an accrual-based report, invoices for which you have requested a deposit will not appear on the profit and loss until the deposit and a portion of the remaining balance of the invoice have been paid. As is the nature of a cash-based report, a deposit will show up on the profit and loss as soon as it is paid. Lastly, sales tax charged on your invoices or incurred on your expenses will not be included on the profit and loss. Sales tax that you charge and collect is not your income. It is a liability that you must remit back to the government. In order to review your sales tax, we can hop over to our next report, the sales tax summary. Head over to the blue toolbar on the left and click into the report section again. Once you're there, select the sales tax summary. Just as we did for the profit and loss, let's set our filters to reflect our reporting needs. We will select the date range of last year so that we can report on 2019 numbers. Since we ran our profit and loss on a billed accrual basis, we will do the same for the sales tax summary. We are reporting in Canadian dollars, so we'll leave our currency as is. Apply the filters to your report. The sales tax report is showing us a few different things. At the top of the report, you'll see our business name, the date range for which we are reporting, and the total amount billed for the date range that we've selected. Within the report, you'll see a breakdown of the different sales taxes that have been added in your FreshBooks account. In this case, we've collected two different types of sales tax, GST and HST. When you add sales tax rates in your FreshBooks account, they will always be reported on individually in your sales tax summary report. We have three different columns in this report: the tax name, the taxable amount, and the taxes. Underneath each tax rate, you will see one line for sales and one line for expenses. The taxable amount in the sales line is the total amount of sales on which tax was applied. The taxes are the amount of tax that was applied. For expenses, the taxable amount in the expense line is the total amount of expenses that tax was applied to. The taxes are the amount of tax that you paid on those expenses. The sales tax summary subtracts your taxable expenses from your taxable sales in order to give you the net taxable amount. Total taxes paid on your expenses is subtracted from the total taxes collected on your sales in order to give you the net tax. It is important to note that the total taxable amount of sales may not match the total billed on the top of your sales tax summary report. If you don't charge sales tax on all your invoices, your total billed at the top of the report will be higher than the total taxable amount of sales within the report. A great way to review which invoices have tax and which invoices don't have tax is to take a look at our next report, the Invoice Details report. Head back to the blue toolbar to select the report section, and then navigate to the Invoice Details report. The options at the top of this report should look familiar. We have our filters, the More Actions button, and the green Send button. The date range in the Filters section will automatically filter by this year, but we'll change our filter to the last year so that we can run our report on 2019 invoices. You can filter the Invoice Details report by issue date or paid date. Issue date will report on all invoices issued within the date range that you select. Paid date will report on all invoices that were paid in the date range that you select. You can choose to run this report by all clients, or you can narrow the report by selecting only one or a handful of clients to include. We'll leave the filter set to all clients for our report. The report can also be filtered by invoice status. You can choose to report on invoices of any status, or you can narrow your search by selecting one or more of the options below. We will leave the filter set to all invoices. Once again, specify your currency and then select the green Apply button to run your report. The Invoice Details report includes a summary at the top of the page detailing total invoiced, amount paid, and amount due. All of your invoices will be listed below, grouped by client. Below the client name is a summary like the one at the top of our report, detailing total invoiced, amount paid, and amount due. Each invoice issued to that client will appear below the summary. All your invoice details can be found here, including invoice number, issue date, a description of the service you've provided, the rate charged, quantity, sales tax applied, including the name of the sales tax, the line total, subtotal of the entire invoice, and total sales tax applied, all resulting in the invoice total. Any amount that has been paid towards this invoice will be shown in the amount paid section. Any amount remaining will show in the amount due section. You can get a quick glance at the status of this invoice in the top right corner. In this case, our invoice is paid in full. You can continue scrolling down through this report to see all of your invoices sorted by client. The Invoice Details report is a great one to export to Excel if you need to do some analysis and sorting on your invoices. Head up to the More Actions button in the top right corner, and you can select Export for Excel. Once you have exported your report, you can sort it in any way that is helpful for your reporting needs. Notice that the tax types are detailed in this report. If you need to see which invoices have specific sales tax applied to them, you can sort and filter by these tax types. If you're looking to review all transactions that are included in sales on the profit and loss, you can use the invoice details report. But note that other income entries are not included on the invoice details report. If you are using other income to track non-invoice income, you'll want to review both the invoice details report and the list of other income entries, which can be found within the invoices section. The last report that we will look at today is called the expense report. Once again, head over to the report section to find and open the expense report. For the date range, we'll once again filter by last year so that we can report on all 2019 expenses. The Group By dropdown allows us to filter the expense report in 4 different ways. The report will default to category. This will sort all expenses by the category and subcategory to which they are assigned. Grouping by vendor will assort all your expenses by assigned vendor if that is indicated on the expense. Grouping by source will sort your expenses based on the team member who imported them into FreshBooks, whether by the business owner, staff member, contractor, or accountant. You can also group this report by client, which is a great way to review your rebuild expenses. The expense report has an option to exclude personal expenses. If you've imported expenses from your bank feed or a CSV file and they include personal expenses that do not relate to your business, you can select the checkbox and these expenses will be excluded from your expense report. Lastly, as with all the reports, we have the ability to filter by currency. Set your filters as required and hit the green apply button to run the report. For our report, we will filter by last year, we will group by category, and we'll exclude personal expenses. Notice on the report, the total current expenses are about $128,000. When we exclude personal expenses, that number will decrease. Apply your filters. At the top of this report, you will see a summary of the total expenses with our personal expenses excluded. Below that, you'll see a breakdown of all the expenses grouped by category. Each expense will include details on the vendor, the source, so the team member who entered it into FreshBooks, as well as detail on how the expense was imported, either via a CSV file or bank import. And then we'll also notice the client name if applicable. The date and description of the expense are included here. If tax was applied on these expenses, you'll see that breakdown by tax type. And finally, you'll see the total amount of the expense. If you have expenses within subcategories, those will be summarized in the expense report just below the main category. The report will give you a total for each expense category below the listed expenses. If you have marked some expenses as cost of goods sold and need to review those, you can export this report to Excel in order to see that detail. Head up to the More Actions button in the top right corner and select Export for Excel. Once in Excel, notice the last column for cost of goods sold, and that all expenses are either yes or no. In Excel, you can sort your expense report in any way that is helpful for your reporting needs. That concludes our review of the reports today. To recap, the 4 reports that we looked at were the profit and loss, the sales tax summary, the invoice details report, and the expense report. Now back to Renee for some helpful tips.
That was great, Sam. And thank you all for joining us. We hope this was helpful. If you have any lingering questions, you can check out our FAQ page to answer some common questions that we get. You can sign up for a webinar. This happens every Thursday from 1:30 to 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. You can also check out all of our previous webinars on our YouTube channel. If you have any feedback you'd like to pass along regarding this webinar, please don't hesitate to let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks again. Stay fresh, folks.